Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Growth Hacking Culture Podcast. Today, we are diving into the fascinating world of leadership development, and we're going to be shaking things up a little bit. You see, traditional leadership development programs are often falling short. A recent study by Deloitte found that only 14% of CEOs believe their company leadership development initiatives are very effective. So I wonder, why are they paying for it? This raises a critical question. Why are so many companies failing to develop the leaders they need? To answer that, we are joined by this incredible guest, Chris Trout, a seasoned leadership expert with over 30 years of experience, including a prominent role at Disney. And by the way, I even had in my hands a book talking about the methodology of Disney for learning. So I think there is a couple of things to learn from that side. Plus, with the experience of Chris, I think we're going to be fully covered. Let me give you a little bit of intro about our guest, Chris. He's a renowned leadership expert and the founder of Unlearn. He has spent his career helping organizations develop their leaders and drive transformational change. Chris has a wealth of experience in various industries, including technology, healthcare, and financial services. He's also a sought-after speaker and author. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited to learn from your expertise on this important and close to my heart topic. Chris, before we start, I just wanted to ask you, so this name that you have for the company that you have founded, Donlon, can you tell me a little bit more from where does it come from? I couldn't guess it.
Yeah, of course. Well, first of all, it's just fantastic to be with you. I so appreciate the opportunity to chat with you and with all your listeners. So Donlin is my mother's maiden name. And when I stepped back and thought about starting my own company, I knew that I wanted to be focused on helping organizations achieve more, unleash their potential, grow with purpose, and really transform challenges into opportunities. And I knew that's what I wanted to do. And I know a lot of people, they name their company different names. Sometimes you name it for your own personal name. But when I thought about my mother's maiden name, Donlin, my mother devoted her life to helping others. She was a social worker and just did amazing things to help human beings grow. And I wanted to honor her, honor my family's legacy by putting the word Donlin out there. Donlin Insights is what we're known as, and we help to bring care, creativity, and smart solutions to organizations. So every time I say the word Donlin, it also just feels so good to me. And for any of your listeners who are wondering where the name actually comes from, it is Irish. So there you go.
That's an incredible story. Chris, so if we look at the topic itself, I have noticed that there is companies are making so many big mistakes regarding the leadership development programs. What are they? What are the ones that you have observed, either inside of your previous company with Disney or outside now with the wealth of access that you have for so many companies that you're helping? What have you observed in terms of the biggest mistakes that they do?
Yeah, when I think about mistakes, I think you have to put mistakes in a context of what are we striving towards, right? So here's a big idea. Like envision a future. The stat you said earlier about Gallup and the Deloitte and the studies, right? Let's envision a future that's the opposite of that, where every individual's talent is nurtured and it's maximized, where talent isn't overlooked, where potential is built. Companies hone their competitive edge through this. Because when we invest in developing talent, the business grows stronger, right? The individuals thrive and communities prosper. So that's what I'm striving towards. A workplace that is undergoing massive shifts needs completely different thinking to deal with those shifts. And there's real consequences happening today, right? There's financial consequences to the current approach to leadership development. Companies lose and don't maximize their investment in their people. You've got high turnover, you've got low productivity, you have emotional implications. Leaders and employees feeling frustrated and disconnected. that they don't feel their talents nurtured. That translates into leaders physically feeling things, right? High stress, burnout. And then here's another consequence that we don't talk about as enough, spiritual. When people don't feel seen or valued or developed, they lose a sense of purpose and alignment with the organization's mission. So that's what I think we need to strive for, like envision this future because of those real consequences. To your question, some of the mistakes are, first of all, not fully integrating leadership development into broader talent development efforts. Strategically, you need to think about alignment around the organization's goals and the skills that you're building. And leadership isn't just leadership skills, rather, they're not just for leaders, not just for people with leaders' titles, they're for everyone. A second mistake is that companies, I don't see them continuously evolving and challenging their content. Leadership development can't be static. Markets aren't static. People aren't static. We know how much the world is changing. You have to keep content fresh and relevant. And I'll just hit on a few others because this is to me some of the most important emphasis. The mistake that a lot of companies make is they don't design with the human experience in mind. It's about intentionally designing for the impact you want employees to have, both for themselves and for the business. It's not just about what you want leaders to know, it's about how they feel, intentionally designing the emotional journey that you take leaders on and the workforce on. It needs to be an ongoing learning experience.
You have said something that is quite impactful and often misunderstood, maximizing the investment on the training. So companies have a budget, but I have the impression that it's not about maximizing in the sense that to have more budget to do more things. It's about doing the right things. So using that budget in a wise manner. And I like this word wise because it makes me think about what you mentioned about this spirituality. We are talking about wisdom. So picking things because we are continuously learning. Uh, I have the impression that the picking of the subjects that we give to for leadership development sometimes wrong. It's not about the process. Like I still remember back in my days in corporate that I had a training about managing for the first time. Oh, that's a famous one. And in fact, when I realized that the same content was given for 20 years in an American company that is in the top 500 companies of the world, that was crazy because I was wondering, things have changed. The way of managing people has changed drastically. The other thing that you have mentioned is about um, challenging their content.
Mhm.
Is it only the content or is it also the way we deliver? The way we were delivering 20, 30 years ago shouldn't be the same. Like I still remember this long 3 days, 5 days training where I wanted to die after the second or third day, or where I wasn't paying attention at all to the content itself. Should we also challenge the way things are delivered?
Yeah, 100%. We need to challenge the way it's delivered, and I want to touch on your point about the financial implications too. Today, I have seen talent investments not be maximized because we have money in different silos in organizations. And there's a whole thing about accounting rules, which make it even more challenging to like maximize the investment. But if you simply just take a look at one, where are the investments taking place? Which silos within HR, which silos outside of HR, and then connect metrics across you begin to see some powerful connections to engagement, productivity, discretionary effort. So that's a really important point. To your yes, absolutely content and how we lead it. So at my company today, we focus on four pillars, and these four pillars are about how we approach everything. The first pillar is about inspiring. This is about big ideas that push boundaries and reimagining what's possible. And you can create meaningful change for leaders and for people when you start with a pillar of inspire. The second pillar we focus on is involving. And this is ensuring everyone has a voice, encouraging ownership, active listening. That creates breakthroughs. Now, those first two pillars, they're all the start of the design process. That's where you say, what are we going to focus on? What are the topics? What are the skills? And then how do we need to bring it to life to really make the impact? And the final two pillars are to integrate, right? You then have to take your design, what you've come up with, and you have to think of new ways to really deliver it, to your point, right? That it truly engages people. And then the last thing, obviously, you have to measure the impact of it all. So I think that's so important that it's not just about the content, it's about the delivery of the content as well.
That's totally right. I I'm thinking about you. You have probably seen this movie Men in Black, right? Men in
Yeah.
Black. So
Yeah.
and they have this tool that makes you forget things.
Yeah.
So you put it, and then if you have seen a monster, an alien, then you forget about it. And I have the impression that similarly, we have a couple of things that we should forget about it, about traditional leadership development. Instead of forget, let's say unlearn. According to you, what specifically do we need to unlearn about traditional leadership development?
Um, okay. So thank you for the Men in Black reference. Great movie, fun movie. And yes, hold up the little pen and unlearn everything. So we're going to click the pen. Here's the first thing you need to unlearn. We need to unlearn that the mindset you need to do great leadership development is not an extension of traditional business training. So, what is traditional business training? You're focused on strategy, you're focused on markets, you're focused on commercial aspects, right? All those things. These things are super important, but leadership development should center on human beings and be directly aligned to human beings in the business context. It's about reimagining leadership as a creative endeavor shaped by both people's needs and the business environment that they're navigating. Let me give you an example from my time at Disney. Um, during Disney purchased 21st Century Fox, right? It was an acquisition, a multi-billion-dollar acquisition.
Mm.
And we were asked to design an onboarding program for the C-suite and the next level down of executives. Now, every acquisition, every M&A, it's tense, right? It's full of stress, it's full of fear. But we flipped that expectation because we created an intimate and engaging experience by first focusing on small groups of leaders at a time, giving them direct access to unplugged conversations with the C-suite and other key leaders of Disney. We even designed a game at the start to foster human connection. The results that we got, right? 100% net promoter score, right? Really incredible testament. And we also got great quotes from the leaders, to the point of like, I left the experience invigorated and ready to take on the challenges with optimism. So it's things like that where you know what the environment is, stress and fear, but you don't lean into that environment as your guiding principle. You lean into the opposite of that. You lean into the humanity. And and we need to unlearn those old rules of leadership development and create programs that are designed with organizational goals, the job roles, human skills.
Mm. Is there any good learnings now that we know that? I mean, beyond you have mentioned this net promoter score uh, as a weight of what how much impact you got into a classroom. Uh, but is there something else that we can learn from behavioral science, neuroscience that lead us to quantify, in fact, not only the wanting of the class, but the actual actions that they can take after the training itself? Is there a way to merge a little bit this trending that, in fact, I got like emotional when I learned a little bit about behavioral science and understanding some principles, how you can nudge people to take actions, accountability, small little pieces of actions instead of the big things.
Mhm.
Is there a way to use it?
Yeah, yeah, I think there is. I think there are a number of measures today. It's similar to your question about financials, right? And seeing the total value of the financial investment in leadership development. We need to do the same thing on the metric side. We need to take a set of metrics that we've used in the past and put them together for a new picture. And we need to bring in new metrics, right? And use new tactics such as nudging, to your point, things from neuroscience. And all of that means when you think about leadership development and really workforce development, right? Um, don't think of it as I have my program, I have my experience, I have my moment here to get people to learn something. It's actually much longer than that. It stretches from before they ever engage with you until after they go. And you have to think about the relationship between the participant, those that are taking the learning, and you have to think about their leader and their peers. Let me give you an example that from my time at Disney again that I think speaks to this. Coming out of the pandemic, we had to create an entirely new virtual experience, and we designed it for senior managers to vice presidents. That in and of itself was very different to bring senior managers and VPs together at the same time. And we were going to emphasize new skills that the pandemic was showing are really important. Skills like care, compassion, empowerment, belonging, and collaboration, right? How to do creative problem solving in new ways, how to make better decisions. So we rolled it out to 600 leaders across North America, Latin America, EMEA in a scalable way right from the beginning. And the feedback that we received was profound, right? Leaders saying things like, it's hard to be a human today, let alone a leader. And this experience has eased some of the pressure that I put on myself. But to your point, we also saw an impressive 30% plus lift in net positive improvements across the leadership behaviors, career conversations, workload management, growth and development, topics like that. And I believe that we were able to get those types of measurable impact because of how we designed it to involve the leaders, the conversations, right? So nudges happened through conversations. Nudges happened by design as a part of it, as well as thinking about not just individual participants, but across the spectrum of all 600 at once.
Chris, what you are talking about leadership development and even about the leadership development of Disney in a way that I must say I'm a little bit unfamiliar because discussions with companies today do not include some of the topics that you have mentioned: compassion, empathy, uh, mindfulness. Well, you didn't mention mindfulness, but now I'm adding on top.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you. Yeah.
And that is kind of sad, in fact, that the human side of leadership is postponed. It's almost like somebody has decided, oh, what can we learn in order to be me as a person smarter? Let's make a little bit of strategy. Let's learn about the processes, how to conduct a talent review. These are the questions that you should be asking. This is how you should be writing. But not enough about these skills, and sometimes it's a meta skills that are necessary to be more human so that we can drive intrinsic motivation in people. It's amazing, no? But don't you have the same feeling? Because I'm pretty sure that after this day, you have been talking with other companies and you were saying, but I had that 15 years ago, 20 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's just look at 5 years, right?
Yes.
5 years ago, right now, the pandemic was just starting, and we were dealing with totally uncharted territory. But what emerged from the pandemic, and in the United States, what happened next with the social unrest and the social movement skills, what we learned how important human skills are and how important to build those skills. Okay, now look 5 years into the future. artificial intelligence. And what is going to make AI, to me, the successful adoption of AI is that having leaders develop people and not have technology develop people. We can't leave it up to the technology to be the driver. We need to make sure human skills are really being developed. Now, this involves, I think, business schools need to make a shift and companies need to shift. And but I'll give you a few topics that I think are really so important for leadership development. First, self-awareness. How do you understand yourself as a leader? How you grow as a leader? Taking the moment, to your point about mindfulness, to pause and become reflective about where you want to grow. If you teach that skill, that's a lifelong skill that someone takes away. There's also compassion. Compassion plays a big part in leadership development curricula of the future, right? What are leaders dealing with today? They are dealing with a plate of things that are arguably harder than any generation of leaderships ever had to deal with in the past. Well, how do you address such complexity? You address it not by hitting it, right? You addressing it not by here's your solve, because our brains kick into fight or flight. You address it through, you treat it with compassion. So compassion's really important skill. I'll give you just a couple of others. Collaboration, how leadership teams collaborate more effectively and solve complex problems in new ways is so important for leaders to do that. I use an assessment called the Foresight Assessment. It's a great assessment that really focuses on individuals understanding their preferences so that they can then collaborate and make great breakthrough innovations. And this whole notion of trust, right? I think there's new and emerging definitions of trust that are so important for leaders to understand. I love the work of Frances Fry, where she talks about that, am I experiencing the real you, right? And that's an element of trust. Am I getting vulnerability? Am I getting genuineness, right? So to your point, like we've got to be building these uniquely human skills, and we've got to be building them in new ways. And when we do that, you reap I mentioned consequences earlier, financial, emotional, spiritual, physical. Those things become rewards, right? You feel invested in, you feel a sense of purpose, and that translates into better business results.
You mentioned the need for leaders and for organizations as such to equip themselves with knowledge about artificial intelligence. But the question is even bigger, is like, how can we motivate leaders to be completely aware about the technology? How can we motivate an organization to embark into learning by themselves, not throwing themselves, you learn this and ciao, but that they want to become a little bit more curious. And maybe that's the real skill that we need to develop, curiosity. Is there a way where the human aspect of learning, the one-to-one, can coexist with technology? Do you see a big role of technology to accompany the development with larger scales to make diffusion of knowledge, behaviors, values fairly quickly?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of aspects of technology. So obviously, technology as you approach learning and leadership development is so important. And there are so many companies out there that they are continuously adding to their technological suite of offerings, right? But I have yet to see one technology that can effectively do everything. So because right, we've got different things. We've got learning events, we've got mentoring, we've got skill development, right? All these different things. And what we need to do is make sure that we're utilizing each of the individual components of technology as effectively as possible to drive what we want. So let me give you an example. You and I are having this conversation via Zoom, right? A lot of companies will deliver training or learning events via Zoom, but I don't think they maximize the full potential of what a virtual environment can do. I have been in virtual conversations and virtual events with people where I literally felt what a person was going through, and that person was on the other side of the world, right? And I literally felt how they were seeing an issue, feeling an issue, what they were struggling with. Well, how do you get to that? You get to that because you design and use all the features of the technology to work to your advantage. You don't just use the technology at face value. So you've got to build breakout groups in. You've got to ask really thoughtful, reflective questions for those groups and individuals to think about. You have to have engaging materials that like showcase and spark visually, as well as facilitation that really gets people thinking. Now, this, and whiteboards, and I could go on and on and on, right? But you've got to use all the technology, and you've got to use it to your advantage versus just using the technology at face value or just thinking, well, I have to scale, so therefore I'm going to use technology to help me scale.
Mhm. I totally, I'm totally with you. So that means that people, facilitators, leaders need to understand how can I use it in the most human way, whatever technology I'm using. And is it something that is meant to be used standalone, which is highly unrecommended? Like, don't give AI the power to coach a human being. There is going to be some mistakes that are going to be done. Um, there is some work to be done so that the package of technology comes with a complementary explanation of how to use it to maximize the human potential. And the design of technology should have this consideration by default, not like okay, I'm going to bitch a little bit about Teams. I hate Teams, by the way. But okay, there are certain aspects that are not human and pieces of people, but it's the most used tool in the world.
I heard somebody say this and I grabbed it, right? I consider myself an omnivore in terms of all these different technologies. We're on Zoom, you've got Google Meet, you've got Teams. I too, Teams is down low on my menu when I'm, picking things just because I don't know. But to your, to this point, right? Whatever it is, whatever you're using, think about human beings. Think about human beings first, and then use technology to weave it in. And I'll also say this. Here's a term we throw around a lot. We say training, right? And whenever someone says to me, I need training, um, I pause because I have a real distinction between training, learning, and development. They're three different things. Training is I can teach you something. I can show it to you. I can take you through it. I can see you do it, and I can measure that you've done it. Learning, well, now we're getting into a whole nother gear. Now we're opening up curiosity. We're opening up questions. You may even ask a question that gets me to learn something, right? Learning goes deeper. And then development is a much longer horizon where someone may have learned something in, in the classroom, be that virtual or real, or just reading something, and they choose to go on a development journey that makes them continue to grow over time. And they actually may become more expert in that topic or set of topics than even the person that was teaching the class. So I think we have to ask ourselves, what are we trying to accomplish here? Training, learning, or development? And they're three different things.
Absolutely. And do you see a major difference? Because you mentioned during the previous question that that leadership, in fact, is independent. Leadership, learning leadership skills is independent of the current positions that you are at, which is quite valid point. And that made me think: would you train leadership skills differently for a current leader versus training a regular employee or somebody who doesn't have a reporting line with others? Would you do it
Yeah.
differently?
So there's nuances to this question. So the straightforward answer is I absolutely believe there are skills that we have traditionally said our leadership skills and limited it to only leaders that we are just wrong about, right? We're wrong about teaching emotional intelligence just to leaders, or teaching communication skills just to leaders, or teaching networking skills just to leaders. Those types of things need to be developed across the whole workforce. They need to be developed across the whole workforce because these are durable skills, right? These are skills that you keep working over your entire life. They help you in your first job, your fifth job, your whatever job, right? And let me give you an example to illustrate what I'm talking about. One of the other things I led at Disney was I launched a significant workforce development effort called Disney Aspire. And Disney Aspire started off by offering education to employees so they could go back to school and they could complete anything from a high school completion program all the way up to a master's degree. And the company paid for it all. It was available to hourly employees in the United States, and we had thousands of employees that participate in it. But here's the real power in an education program for a business. It's about turning that education into a workforce development program. So how do you do that? You need to make sure that you recognize the skills that people are learning, your participants, through education, right? Whether
Mm.
they're learning finance or whether they're learning technology or whether they're learning marketing, right? That's one set of skills. But you need to help them get the other skills that are going to help them with, am I going to get the career that I want? How do I get that next job, right? And these employees, they're employees that, worked at a front desk or were a server in a restaurant, and they had aspirations to be in finance, to be in marketing, to be an operations leader. So we set up and gave them broad-based skill development in these other skills, right?
Mm.
Resume building, communication skills, networking skills. And amongst all the thousands of participants that were in the program, when we asked them, what are the top skills that you took away from participating in this? What did we hear back? We heard problem solving, critical thinking, resilience. We heard the word leadership and adaptability. And so these aren't just skills that they're going to use today. These are skills that they'll use across their entire life. And
Mm.
the cool thing is it had a profound impact. Over 4,000 employees got promoted, life-changing income things happened to them. All of that comes from not just saying leadership skills belong to leaders and other employees need to have these skills. It's about creating an environment where you open up the space for curiosity and understanding. I mentioned at the front end of answering this question the nuance behind it. There are certainly things that a C-suite needs to learn that are distinct and different than other levels of leadership. But you don't operate that you bifurcate everything all the way down.
Chris, I have the impression that when you turn around a training and you make it relevant, not because of the purpose of the company, but because you're trying to help the individual, because it's something that is going to be usable in my personal life as well as at work, then the level of motivation of attention changes drastically. Because I still remember trainings that were focused only with business examples. And I was saying, but that example could be extrapolated to my normal life, to the relationships that I have with my wife, with my children, or whatever. Only then I could get the motivation to do it. But from the beginning, from the start, it should have been announced. This is useful for anything that you want to do in life. I would have got a different perspective, a different mindset.
Yeah, here you're making me think of another example here. Well, first of all, before I give the example, what you're touching on is something that I believe, which is that lots of times we will talk about businesses based on the industry that they're in, right? Are you in finance, technology? Are you in media, et cetera? And that's an important question because there are really important things that certain industries have and they have to deal with it, whether those be those regulation, whether those be the amount of disruption. It's certainly important stuff. However, well, actually, it's a yes and. Like that's all true. And human beings in organizations have some very common characteristics that span any industry, right? That span any business. Let me give you this example that when we did all of our leadership development at Disney, and this was from first time leader up to the C-suite and everybody in between, we put together experiences, whether those be in person or virtual, and we brought together every um, business segment of the company in multiple regions together to go through the learning. And every time we would run one of these, you would, and just for your listeners, give an example, right? You could be from EMEA, and you could be in the corporate business in EMEA, sitting next to a studios person from California, sitting next to an ESPN person from LATAM, right? Different businesses, different contexts, different regions. And without fail, every time the leader would show up, they would think to themselves, why am I here with all these different people from all
Yeah.
these different businesses? But without fail, at the end, we would get quotes unsolicited that said, when I walked in here, I thought you all, meaning another group that was there, you all had all the problems and my division didn't. And now what I realize is that we all share common problems, common challenges. And the leadership commonality is that we can help one another. Like I
Mm.
saw this play out time and time again, from first time leaders all the way up to those that were being groomed for the C suite. And I think it's a testament to the fact of these human characteristics, right? Focus on human characteristics, focus on building leaders around these human characteristics, and the skills are transferable.
Mm. That drives me to thinking, because I've been thinking about it during the weekend. Um, the correlation. So it is good to have moments like in a training where we share uh, good knowledge of others, difficulties, challenges that others may have. But what if it was more often that the ideal structure in organization wasn't anymore functions, but that the work that's being done is work around challenges and is group of people with from different functions that spend most of the time working on a challenge from different parts of the world. And I'm mindful that this is something that is being done in many startups, but in big corporations, they are bloody scared of implementing that because I think there is so much to learn and develop in terms of collaboration, in terms of empathy, when you're working with a different group than just yours, the marketeers, the sales guys, or the financial. That should be part of the learning process, in fact, to collaborate in squads, in groups of people for a couple of months, couple of weeks.
Yeah. Here's the thing that large companies face. So large companies face a lot of challenges, right? How do they scale their operations? How do they scale their businesses? How do they grow their markets, right? And so everything is like big, 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 go, scale, scale. How you really make a leadership development, grow leaders in that environment, I should say. Well, you have to approach your leadership development to make the company feel smaller in order to operate in bigger ways. And
Mm.
you do that through, you mentioned this earlier, and I'll just underscore it, right? Anytime I do if I'm doing a recurring leadership development offering, right? I've of course got set uh, content that we are leaning into that we believe is important. But every individual and every group of people, they're unique. And so we don't just take the static content, we look at who is this group of individuals and which parts of what we plan do we need to turn up the volume on? Which parts do we need to turn down? What might we be missing that this group really, really needs? Bottom line is meet people where they are, right? Meet people where they are. And when you do that, and you're a big company, what happens is that people feel a connection. And that connection, to your point, doesn't just live in the leadership development offering. That connection lives in they go home and they have a conversation with their partner and they're like, I got exposure to this and I'm thinking about me and some of the stuff in our relationship. And I think there actually might, right? And when that happens, like, okay, now we're in another gear. Now we're in another gear because that actually makes them a better human being. And then that turns around and grows their business, and then they have more support at home.
Sorry. Um, let's think about the worst case scenario because I have heard certain companies mentioning, okay, let's say that I don't invest enough in training and development for my leadership guys. I offer wonderful packages so I can attract the Bains, the McKinsey to be my future leaders. Uh, I want to ask you this provocative question. What can happen to this type of companies who thinks acquiring is the solution to the failure of not developing the right type of leadership in their companies? What is the worst case scenario? What would happen with these companies?
So here, to me, here's the worst. Here's one of the worst cases that can happen. If you don't invest in developing your leaders, and I would say developing your workforce, it's death by 1,000 cuts, right? So, if you're not familiar with the phrase, right, you get a little cut. It's a little thing. It's not really bothering me. And then you think it's healing and you stop paying attention to it. So what are those little cuts? Those eventually, if you don't care for them, they add up to big wounds. And then you are chasing yourself to heal. You're doing trauma management because of what happened. That same thing happens here with this lack of investment because you don't see the leader every day who, because she didn't get an investment, is disconnected with the purpose of the company and is just kind of leading. They're kind of leading okay today, right? But it's not great. She's not uplifting her people. She's not asking the questions that help them grow. She's not curious about the business strategy, right? So collaboration falls behind, innovation falls behind, like all those things. Now, if you're a large company, you've got deep pockets and you probably think like, oh, I can make up for this, right? I can make up for this. You can, but you've now spent more money than you would have spent if you just focus on the leadership and workforce development to start. Have you seen the studies by both PwC and Gallup about the multi-trillion-dollar costs related to productivity and in the world? Like it's multi-trillion dollars. If companies simply invested in it, you can go to the rewards that exist for financial, you can go to emotional rewards, spiritual rewards. Now, to your point, or to your question rather, if the worst case scenario is that they don't do any of those things and think that, okay, I'm going to hire PwC, I'm going to hire Gallup, I'm going to hire McKinsey, and they're going to come save the day, the patient is on the table in a really traumatic moment, and you've got much deeper things that have to be done. And so I don't think some companies won't survive. They will get bottled up. They will get purchased. They will get taken over, or they'll implode under their own weight. And leaders that truly understand this, they'll come in and they'll do the work necessary.
I just thought about a very provocative question, Chris, and you're going to hate me for that. Because what if from now to 5, 10 years, learning and development department does not exist anymore, and that everything is handled by people's managers? That means that you give feedback, you have the right human skills. Maybe most of the people are trained through a AI bot. You ask questions, he answers, he gives you tips, he gives you even recommendations of what you should be doing as a practice, some little nudges here and there. Thus, now with AI, and if you have a capable leadership bench, can you forget? Can we say that learning and development is gone? I know that it's a pushy question. I just thought about it, but I just wanted to ask you that.
So let's ask ourselves this. What problems do businesses face today? They face AI integration. They face how they're going to work AI into their business. Right. I think the last study by the World Economic Forum is 37% of job skills are going to change for the future.
Yeah.
We've talked about a whole bunch of other things. Okay, that's just on the business side. Then I got to attract people. I need to keep these people. I need to have engagement. I'm worried about my consumer experience. I'm worrying about the talent costs. Wow, are we strategically really aligned as a leadership team? If learning and development goes away,
The department, only the department, not the.
only the department.
That means that leaders have an accountability to develop people by providing feedback, by coaching them, by showing them sometimes. And the rest is a little bit like me. I can tell you, last weekend I was chatting with my Gemini AI, asking questions after questions. He was answering back and forth just to learn a new skill that I was interested about.
So here's how I think learning and development teams could contribute to making your question become a reality. If a learning and development team continues to operate on traditional methods of developing leaders, developing employees, old school instructional design, like here's my content, this is what I need to do, just get people into the classroom, I think you set yourself up for being treated as a cost versus an investment that really makes the future incredible. If, however, you view your function as I'm going to be strategically aligned to the business and I'm going to help the human beings in this business be just rock solid and grow for the future, and I'm going to do bold, innovative things that go along, I think you're like now we're going with what the business needs to do. Now we're going what the market needs to do. And if you do that, and people are doing what you just said, which is leaning into their own development on their own, Gemini, Chat GPT, like any of those things, you've got the opportunity for a great confluence of things because people are doing their own initiative, and you can capitalize on that curiosity and that understanding to make an even bigger impact. You start to solve complex cross-organizational challenges in new ways.
Chris, I love what you're saying. And the thing is that despite the fact that there is AI, you still need sometimes kind of prompt architects, the ones who knows how to ask the right question to the AI bot. And I have the impression that, as you say, that the role of the agility of learning and development departments is going to determine how they're going to be delivering. For sure, in 5 years from now, it will not be anymore the same approach, same way, but not catching up with technology today is almost the future death of a traditional learning and development department.
Yeah. And so here, before AI, how often do you think human beings took the time to really reflect on their leadership or reflect on deep questions, right? Those that did, like they really grow. AI offers an opportunity that could be, right, you can be really powerful or it can be really poor. The really poor thing is just let technology drive the day, right? Not think about human beings. And the really powerful thing is for people that maybe did not reflect as much, when you start to ask AI questions, but you don't take what AI says as, as the truth, but you use it then to spark more of your own curiosity and more of
Yeah.
your own development. And I start to talk with you about it, right? Okay, now we're starting to unlock some things. That's my hope. Like my hope is that when that begins to happen, we get more thoughtful conversations of leadership teams that prepare workforces for the future, that we build more inclusive workplace cultures, that we foster greater resilience. And by the way, all of that, and this doesn't get talked about enough, if businesses are doing all of that, there's a positive, lasting impact on communities too that can be created, right? Really long-standing issues that have, such as income inequality, lack of opportunity for different groups, like those can begin to be addressed, and you can have positive, lasting impact. I got to live there day in and day out. You can both deal with what is challenging and be inspiring.
I love what you say because it is another topic that has been challenging me in my head. This story about the accessibility of right education prior to coming to the corporate world. Who is going to teach if I, in your country, sorry to say that, in your country, you have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for education. By the way, in my country, it's Switzerland, in the top universities, you pay $2,000 per year, top university. And probably these two top universities are in the ranking of the world, maybe number 15, Zurich Polytechnical School, and number 30, Lausanne Polytechnical
Yeah,
School in the
yeah.
world. So, and it's $2,000. So now with this challenge that if you don't have the money to go into a good university, then you are limited on the accessibility, and that is going to make a disparity. And God knows that I really think that in AI we have a huge opportunity to learn without paying for that bullshit title coming from a prestigious university.
Yeah, yeah, it's a very big challenge, and I again I hope we view there are literally millions of people who have talent and have potential that are not seen today, and they're absent of opportunity. And we got to do everything we can to help lift them up, because when you do that, the businesses grow stronger, and it stops some of these costs that are just weighing down everything.
Yeah, I have seen also, I have observed an increase of neurodivergent people, that learn differently, and they take a little bit of time to go into the path that they are supposed to go, but it's difficult. I still remember the example of a guy who did his studies with me. The guy, as after the regular school, he went into working into wood because he was neurodivergent. He ended up catching up 3 years later, being having a doctorate in chemistry. The guy just had to get the right opportunities and the right moment in order to learn how to deal with an extra challenge in the standard life. Chris, we are almost at the end of this conversation, but I wanted to ask you. So people are going to be interested not only about what the famous Walt Disney University has done, the methodology of learning, but especially about you being able to help them to develop new leaders, to develop new cultures. How can they reach you out, Chris?
Thank you so much for that. So you can reach me really easily at chris@donloninsights.com, DONLON insights.com. And Donlin Insights is my website, and you can reach me there. Feel free to email me, feel free to contact me through the website. And I am, this is a passion for me, Ivan, right? This is work, but it's work that's been called to me to make a difference in the world. And whether that's working with business leaders themselves, or learning and development teams, organizational development teams, for how they can be more effective, it just fires me up to no end.
I totally feel you. I know how it feels when you catch up the attention of an audience and you feel that they feel that that you have given something to them. I know
Mhm.
that feeling, and that is 10,000 better than money. I know what you mean. Chris, it was so nice to have you with me. Thank you very much for making the time. Thank you, really.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks. Oh, wait a second.